All right, everybody, thank you for joining us on Tax Rep Network this week. I'm very excited about my guest this week. Joining me is Mariette Martinez, who, if you're on social media, you probably know who she is, all right? Mariette is a financial accountant, IRS enrolled agent, and Intuit trainer and writer who's worked in the accounting, tax, and technology industries for over 2 decades. Mariette designs and delivers educational content that accelerates the financial growth and awareness for micro businesses, self-employed solopreneurs, and I love that term, and the small business partners that serve them. She provides consulting sessions and live workshops to her community designed to deep dive into specific small business financial topics and technologies. Her current passion project, TusTraceMastres.com, is a co-founded bilingual e-learning platform that will bridge the financial literacy gap for English and Spanish-speaking small business owners. So, Mariette, welcome to the program. And just so our listeners know, I met you after following you, on Facebook for a while. I'm inspired by what you're doing and what you're talking about, because it very much jives with what I've been talking about, which is that we have to sort of elevate our game. All right. And that's a message you've been delivering. It's a message I've been pushing. So first of all, welcome. I'm thrilled you agreed to do this in tax season, no less.
Yes.
But let's start with the basics. So where do you start? If you're an accountant sitting there, you're listening to this podcast, probably 11 o'clock at night, trying to get the return piles off your floor. It all sounds great. Then Eric hangs up and walks away. Where do you start with this?
Yeah. So, well, first I want to thank you, Eric. And I agree. We've met through circles, and I think we've been in the same circles for many years. We actually both taught at Scaling New Heights, and our rooms were right next to each other. Yep. But we didn't have a chance to, pull each other aside and really spend time together. But so I appreciate being on here, and I love your show. It's hilarious and incredibly informative at the same time, which, you gotta be your distinctive advantage is that you are incredibly intelligent and also just tell it the way it is. And I love that. So thank you for keeping us on our toes on your podcast. And again, I'm really happy to be here. Where do we start? So, I agree. I think that it's been many years now, of course, with Intuit's campaign with the Firm of the Future, the Scaling New Heights campaign on the Transformative Advisor. And many of us in the thought leadership world, we talk a lot about, elevating your business, stepping it up or stepping it aside. That's what I say. There are only 2 choices you can do now to stay relevant in our industry. And, we all have our different ways of doing that. I'm just going to keep it really simple. And I'm just going to give some insight on what's helped me and what's helped many of my colleagues, be able to step it up, especially right now that if you are listening to this during tax season, probably don't want to hear a lot of the technical side of it, right? Because you already have a lot of, those technical things happening, the numbers and the forms. So let's just go a little deeper. I'm going to go a little deeper in regards to how to get started. And I'm going to take it from the perspective of, possibly your listeners are people that are already really good at what they do. They probably have the technical skill set. They're probably really knowledgeable in their business, but they want to be more passionate about what they want to do. They want to actually get up in the morning and be excited to get up and work and to serve people and to help people, because in our industry, especially in the accounting, bookkeeping, and tax industry, we actually serve others. And so to be in a place to serve someone else, you really need to know why you're doing it. You really need to be able to say, why am I serving this community? Why am I getting up every day and saying that I want to help my clients, my community, my colleagues and my peers? Why am I doing that? And so, the really first step is to go back and revisit the why you even got into the business, the why you chose the market that you're serving, and really deep dive into that. Look inwards. And again, I don't want to get too, emotional and touchy-feely, but really, if you want to be happy and if you want to find passion and purpose and profitability, you have to ask yourself the why question. But when I talk about the why question, I always go a little deeper and say it's not just why, It's not just defining your why, but also figuring out what you're going to do with it. So you can say, you know, my why is that I want to serve people. In my case, I want to serve solopreneurs and self-employed individuals that truly need a champion to back them up, because they're the community that really doesn't have that knowledge and that literacy, and even the community of accountants and bookkeepers and tax pros that want to tackle that community because they could be difficult. So maybe that's my why. But then what am I going to do about that? Like, how am I going to move forward with that? What am I going to provide them? What are those packages going to look like? How am I going to monetize that? So there's a lot more to this kind of shift on going back and revisiting your why than just saying, okay, this is what I do and why I do it. No, you got to literally create a package around your next move forward, that next elevating move. You have to create a package around it.
You know, it's so true. And I wanted to tell you, so you've probably heard. So Jeff and I opened our doors a little over 5 years ago. We have a part-time admin. We're 22 people today. We're moving to 10,000 square feet. We need 3 more people. And so, but we're still doing things the same way as when we opened our doors, which has been a train wreck. The phone rings so much, I can't keep up. I actually can't do work. I spend all day taking in new clients, dealing with that. I literally can't do work. And at one point, I spoke to a friend of mine who's, I also have to come have on the show, Brent Robertson from Fathom. And they do artificial intelligence and disruption and whatnot. And I said to him, I said, everything's going great. The firm is blowing up. My tax rep program coaching is going fantastic. The podcast is taking off. So why am I so miserable? And so he said, look, I'm going to come down. Let's have coffee. And so we sit there, and I'm bitching about all this. And he said to me, and this is why I want to talk about, which what you hit on. He said, what do you want? And it threw me. I'm like, what do you mean what I want? He said, what do you want? And for an hour, we went around. And I'm like, I don't know what I want. He said, yep. So here's the thing. He said, what they do and what you can help me get to wherever I want to be. But if I can't tell you where I want to go, you can't help me. And the way it was put was, he said, your brain is a servo mechanism. Smart bombs have a servo mechanism. As long as you know what your target is and you're very clear in what you want, even when it moves like a bomb, you will follow it, right? Your brain will know how to get you to where you want to go. And one of the drums I've been beating has been, you know, it's not that complicated. Not to put me and Jeff and everyone, what we do is not that complicated. All right. It takes effort. All right. There is grinding involved. There is effort to get there. Even automating. Like now I've begun taking steps to automate part of my practice. And it's learning new stuff. It is doing things differently. And that in itself is work. But the biggest thing, you're hitting your why, is, you know, I want to serve. What do you want your practice to look like?
Yes, exactly.
And that, I have to tell you, and then just if you're listening to this, I couldn't answer that initially. In fact, Jeff and I, to this day, we are still working with Fathom to come up with what do we want this thing to look like? Then we have to bring the rest of the partners and associates in to say, this is the vision, this is how we're going to get there, and we need everyone rowing in the same direction.
I love that. I love that you said that. And I think you just touched on some big words that I think are maybe shared lightly, but they're incredibly powerful and impactful and important. Is the vision, is literally being able to, whether you need to go ahead and do a vision board. I mean, that's why people go and do a full retreat and they do a vision board on what they want their life to look like, what they want their business to look like, what they want the culture in their company to look like and feel like. And you can do that by writing it down. You can do that by actually, you know, creating a visual board, but you need to actually express it. And expression can come in many different ways. And that's where in our industry we struggle, because we're not ones that really express our feelings. And so to have to go ahead and take pictures out of a magazine or to ask yourself the what and the why, it's not very natural for our industry, but it's incredibly critical, because our industry is going into a situation where we actually need to be expressing our feelings to our clients. We actually need to create a relationship with our clients, which is also very different than, 20 plus years ago when I started the industry. You would just do the work, you provide the service, you provide the results, and that was it. Now it's very different. Now you pull them in, you have Zoom meetings, you connect with them, you talk about their dreams. I say something in a lot of my trainings, and I say that I am not in the accounting or the tax preparation business. I'm in the dream fulfillment business. I fulfill dreams. And, that could be, again, a little powerful to some people and maybe a little bit too emotional to others. But when I talk to a solopreneur, for instance, and they want to tell me where they want to be in 5, 10, 15 years, where they want, how they want to save for their kids' college, how they want to invest in themselves from a personal and professional perspective, we're fulfilling dreams. We're talking about dreams. And so if you don't have your own dreams, like you as a professional, as an accounting and bookkeeping and tax professional, if you don't even know your own dreams, how can you help somebody else fulfill their dreams?
And it's actually why your role is so important, because we can't see it. We're so caught up in the daily chaos.
Yes.
And we, meaning Green and Sklar's, if you're listening to this, wherever you are, you're caught up in the chaos of it. And it's why it's so important to have someone come in and kind of help you. And they're not telling you what to do, but like you said, you put the board up, or you put the stickies up, the big
Yes.
super stickies up on the wall, and you're mapping things out. And what I found fascinating was we had 3 that was literally what's working, what's not, and I'm mind blanking on the 3rd category. And in talking back and forth, I was very surprised at what we began to realize was not working.
Right.
And
Yeah.
once you have, it's almost like they clear away the clutter and they turn down the noise so that you can actually see what's actually happening and say, okay, and come up with a game. When you have a game plan, or you have a checklist, or you have your daily, you write your goals down the beginning, whatever it is. I come in, I got 200 open matters. It's overwhelming. But if I have mapped out in my tasks, here are the 5 things I'm going to get done today.
Right.
It's very manageable, right? I can go bang, bang, and just start knocking stuff off. So at the end of the day, something got done. I walk away feeling, and that's why, by the way, I found I was working nonstop, because it was never ending.
Right. Exactly. And I love the fact that you said, that the task management, again, we go, being from a technical, being in a technical skill in a technical industry, we're good about maybe organizing the task and knowing that we have to do tasks, but the prioritizing based on why we're doing what we're doing, again, that's where we struggle. Like, why are we doing this task when we should have delegated it to somebody else? Like, and then if we haven't had that why conversation with ourselves, we're going to do exactly with what you said, Eric. We're going to do it all, but we shouldn't be. We should be doing the high valued services, and we should be providing the high valued time, and we should give all those smaller tasks. They're just as important, because again, that's all part of getting things done, but we need to give those to somebody else. We need to start either automating, as you mentioned, or delegating. And automating is obviously using artificial intelligence and automation, machine learning, or any other kind of project management task system you can create that's like a well-oiled machine. But then the other side is delegation. And delegation could be to yourself, meaning, okay, I want to do this now. Why? Because I know what I want to do. And so now I know I want to do this part, and all the other 9 parts, I'm going to give to somebody else. And we have to make that step forward. Even, and from a perspective of the services I provide micro businesses, so mom and pop small businesses with less than 10 employees, or solopreneurs that are doing very well, but they usually have, a couple of employees or maybe just contractors, and they struggle with delegation, but that's why they can't move forward. That's why they can't take that next step, because they're trying to do everything, and you can't do everything. It's impossible.
And the thing is, which is interesting, is automation, in some ways, you feel like it's a threat. But the reality is, if you are prepared to step up, it creates an opportunity. Because if I can automate parts of my practice, can I not, no, there are two aspects of it. One is, do I need my staff and could I reduce headcount? But in my mind, can we not do more with the footprint that we have? Can we not accomplish more because I've got these great people around me?
Right.
And the opportunity isn't, I mean, there are two ways. There are corporations that say, oh, opportunity, we can get rid of headcount, right? And the stock price goes up because that's all people care about is the 2 cents that fall to the bottom line. But when you're a solo or solopreneur, like you like the term you coined, which I love, it's not an opportunity to literally be able to do more, punch above your weight, in other words. What used to take a 50 lawyer firm, can we not do with 13 lawyers now because of automation?
Yes.
What sank the J.K. Harrises of the world, I mean, there were some that were thieves, and I don't want to get into that, but what sunk, my understanding from people involved, what sunk J.K. Harris wasn't they were ripping people off or not doing the work. They couldn't manage the caseload. Mm-hmm. There was no software. They literally couldn't manage the caseload. And they literally collapsed under their own weight. So it appeared almost like they weren't doing anything because they literally just couldn't keep up.
Right.
With automation now, if you can embrace that, and it does change your role because now I'm not doing the sending out the retainer agreements and getting the checklist to the client. That should all be automated so I can be dealing with the client. And in many ways, it's the relationship why you build your practice. They don't want to leave Mariette because they want Mariette. People want to come in, they want to meet with Amanda or Eric or Jeff or whoever. They don't want to, have it automated. So if we can automate the other stuff so we can focus on the high-end stuff, the important stuff, I think you get more pleasure out of your practice.
Absolutely.
The practice becomes more fun. You're not stuck in the mundane. No, and so I don't want to get too far. So we've talked about the why. But what if you get stuck?
Yeah.
That's right. You're sort of like, as I was, and again, I brought in outside people to kind of help me kind of declutter my mind, if you could.
Yes, absolutely.
You can't really, but you can try. How does somebody move forward with this?
Yeah. I love the question on whether, what you do when you get stuck, because I think, again, I've gone to so many events and conferences and listened to people left and right. And interesting enough, I had a really aha moment about 3 years ago when I was stuck, when I had learned about the why, and I was going through the transformation of wanting to get up every morning and be really excited about what I do. But I just didn't really know how to do it though. Like, how do I write my why? Like, where does the why come from? Like, how do you actually write it out? And how do you prioritize? Like you said, if you have 20 tasks, how do you prioritize what you should do now that you have a why? And what other people should do. Like, I was trying to learn as I was going and it wasn't working. And again, I wanted to accelerate this. I didn't want to be trying to figure out my why for 5 years. I wanted to accelerate and elevate. And so I started going to masterminds. And so I heard about masterminds and I heard about this idea of getting into a smaller, intimate group of people that are all like-minded and they are thinking in acceleration. And they would talk a lot about coaches, about the fact that, I have a coach and my business coach comes in and helps me basically prioritize my tasks. They help me write even my packages and my pricing, and they help me visualize what my rocks are, meaning those things I have to move forward with in the next 90 days, in the next 6 months, 12 months. And I realized, I'm like, and this is where the moment happened, because I was kind of like, well, how can I not already do that? I already kind of coach my clients. I help them set up their systems. I deal with their accounting and their taxes. I'm already consulting. Why can't I do that for myself? So I had this moment of thinking that I was too good to get a coach. And I realized I need to cut that out. Like, no one's too good to get a coach. And so I went out there and I found myself a business coach. I found myself someone that would, be in my budget and really help me move those rocks and teach me about, having a vision and creating that board and prioritizing. And it would, essentially what it did for me, it created clarity. And like a big moment for me was a lot of the things they were telling me, I was already doing it. And I wasn't even aware I was doing it until they created this clarity moment of awareness of like, put everything out on the table. Like, go ahead and give me all your dirty work. And it was funny because I've been on that other side, asking my clients to give me all their dirty work and all the stuff they've been doing with their money and their finances, their taxes. I've been on the other side asking that from a client, but I had never been the client having to share that. And so it was a really transformational moment and very humbling. You definitely find your humility in that moment, but talk about acceleration. I mean, I've had people come up to me and say, what happened? Like, what happened to you from 17 to 19? Like, how did you do that? How did you change? And I give it all to my coaching. I give it all to my masterminds and my coaching and my accountability tribe that are constantly checking on me and making sure that I'm staying true to my true north and my mission and my vision. And I couldn't have done that without a coach. Personally, I couldn't have done it without a coach.
Well, so if you read Napoleon Hill, right, Think and Grow Rich, he talks about mastermind groups and who started them.
Yes.
Carnegie, Vanderbilt, successful people who knew that they wanted to be able to bounce ideas to get to their next level because there was no internet. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know where to find a coach, there are a lot of them available for free. I began listening to a podcast called Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu, who founded Quest Protein. And he has on some of the most fascinating people. Ed Milet has been on, Bedros Keuilian, who I listened to and made a statement that really is why I went and found help. Because he said, if you're out there with a message and people aren't buying, people say, well, they're too cheap, they don't get it. No. Your message isn't resonating.
Yes.
The problem isn't them, the problem is you. And I listened to it. I was driving into work on a Saturday. And I remember thinking, that's it. That is it. He just nailed it on the head. And the problem is me, which by the way, is a tough thing to admit.
Very.
And so I did. And I told Brent, why am I so miserable? And I said, I clearly am not getting my message. And what they pointed out to me is I didn't even know why my members had joined TaxRep. I had never talked to my members. They were sort of faceless people who were just watching the videos. I finally went in and took a good look one night at my member area, which was just a big, it was a big pile of shit. It was just video after video, no order to it other than the date it was done, multiple versions of programs. And I remember thinking, I wouldn't pay for this.
Right.
And I said, this is stupid. And so I went out and I surveyed my members. Meanwhile, I called Clemens, who's my web guru, who's terrific. And I told him the same thing. And I said, I'm going to map out what this should look like. And within a week, we had sorted it, pulled all the old stuff into an archive. So it's still there, but it's one button archive. We have exam, collection, criminal, marketing, other, just ethics or whatever else, and an archive. So now when you go in, there are 6 distinct boxes. You go in, there's the most recent program, the rest is archived. Handout materials are there. So one is the training is now cleaned up. But I talked to my members, and what I really came through is they wanted access to me. The videos are good. And marketing was right behind it. And so I began putting more effort into how do I do what I do? How do I find my clients? How do I deal with my clients? Number one. And 2 is, why does it all have to be about me? I have former revenue officers, former IRS special agents who've joined my program. Other members should meet each other. So we created an internal forum, and now it's become this thriving community.
Love it. I love
it. But it started by listening. So if you are listening to this and you're listening to me, go check out Mariette, obviously. And I'm going to tell you how to find her, at the end of the program. I'll put links below. But go out and find things that are good for you. Audio, YouTube channels that are good for you, podcasts that are good for you.
Absolutely.
Read, and not just read about accounting, business, marketing, management. And I'm going to tell you, Dawn Brolin is the one who got me into this at Scaling New Heights. I didn't see you because we were too busy teaching at the same time. But I had never walked into, and I'm going to be at Scaling New Heights this year. I told Joe Woodard this story, who I'm going to have Joe on the program, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Because
Awesome.
this year is about transforming your business.
It is.
But transforming your practice. I'd never walked into the exhibiting hall. And so I walked in there with Dawn, and I'm blown away.
Absolutely.
The stuff that I didn't even know existed, the stuff that is there. And by the way, there's a part of it that's a little frightening, because what you can see is, at what point do they no longer need me anymore?
Yeah.
But because of the relationships, and this is what I love, why you talk about, you're in the relationship business, right? You're in the dream business. That's the relationship, why they come. And what these other things are tools to enable you to do more of what you love to do.
Exactly. And I just want a few things that you said. I want to make sure I point them out, because I thought they were awesome. It's, going back to elevating and moving forward. You had mentioned, and I want everyone that's listening to understand, you can talk about it, you can get help, but I loved how Eric said, and then I went to my website, and then I fixed it up, and then I talked to my community, and they gave me feedback, and then I went back and I took action. What happens a lot is that we almost get into, okay, we're going to plan for it. Okay, we know we're supposed to get feedback. And so we pile up all of this stuff, and then we don't do anything with it. And so you need to take action quickly. If you knew that your website was, crappy at the moment, you need to get your web guru in there and need to be like, we have 2 weeks or we have 1 month. That's how I talk to my web designer. He's also awesome. He's been with me for 10 years. And I'll tell him, we have 1 month to revamp the whole partner page, or to revamp, and that whole month, that's all we're doing. We're literally back and forth. We use Asana for project management, and we're tasking each other back and forth, because we're on a high. We're excited about it. You can't put those things for later on. Even when you're in the middle of tax season. I remember people would be thinking I was crazy, because I'd be speaking, I'd be doing workshops, I'd be having my tax season, and it all be happening at the same time. But what people don't understand is that when you are in tax season, you're actually at your highest. You are working at a potential and at a capacity that you're not going to be in a few months, because you're going to be so burnt out and exhausted. You're not going to even want to be thinking or talking about these things. So believe it or not, thinking about why you're doing taxes, this is a good time to be thinking about why you're doing taxes when you're doing taxes, because you may decide you don't want to do that anymore and you want to do tax planning, or you want to do tax rep. So you really should be thinking about what you're doing when you're doing it, not later on. So I just want to make sure I mentioned that, because I love how Eric talked about how he took action right away. And that's a big thing, is a lot of times we get stuck. We don't take action. We have to do that.
And now it's, and you told me this, true stories. Your students actually tell you what they want. Mm-hmm. My members, this afternoon I recorded dealing with a sales tax exam, and as you can imagine, I tend to avoid state topics because I don't know all 50. I mean, but so many of my members wanted it, and so I put together the funniest, most screwed up stories I have that illustrated different issues. And so it was actually a lot of fun putting it together. I was like, oh, I remember that case. And but the issue, we have our why, right? We talked about why. We're ready to start, need to elevate my practice. Now what?
Yeah, honestly, now what? And I think we got to just go back to, we've talked about so many things, but to keep it super simple, again, this is a heavy topic, if you want to be honest. There's a lot involved, but the way that I've been able to move forward is, again, as I mentioned before, is I decide on what I want to automate. And automate doesn't mean that things are literally happening automatically. Everything is just magically happening. I mean, there's things that I actually had to set up, workflows. I had to implement project management systems. I had to implement, let's say, 17 hats to do all of my lead capture forms and my engagement letters. And I needed to bring in a virtual assistant to do things that, I shouldn't be doing. So that is part of the automation and the delegation, what I mentioned. And the other step, honestly, is now deciding on what I want to offer. So I always like to go back to John Morrill. So if you don't follow John Morrill, he has an amazing blog, and he says that you can if you eliminate your low hourly rate activities by assigning to someone else or using software, then all you need to do at that point is just use your rate to provide higher and higher value. And I love that, because now, you know, whenever I am working with a client, it's always a high valued experience. I am not, you know, doing data entry or reconciliations. I'm doing financial analytics, or I'm doing planning, or I'm teaching them so that way they can get empowered themselves. And so, but I mean, it took time to get there, but I want to spend time providing high valued services, but I had to do everything beforehand to get here, either by automating or delegating that work. And so again, this is something that takes time. It's not like you're going to do this overnight. But if, as Eric mentioned, I love that, if you already can create that roadmap and say within the 1 year or 3 years, I've had people tell me, Mariette, and I love it when they say, I am where you're at 3 years ago. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, because I'm actually on your journey, but I'm at where you're at 3 years ago. So now I can see where I can be in 3 years. And of course, that's incredibly humbling for someone to say that. And I always tell them, no, you're at where you're at, not where I'm at. But I get what they're saying. They basically need that vision of like, you know, I want to be able to be where Eric's at and have a podcast and have a mastermind group or tax rep network and have a thriving firm. I want to be there, but you can't be there without taking the steps, having the coach, mapping it out, and then creating the tasks around it. Whether either, you know, automating those tasks or delegating those tasks or doing them yourself. And so again, a lot in there, what I said, but ultimately it all goes back to the vision. Like, are you envisioning what this looks like? That's incredibly important.
And it's why grinding alone is not enough. To simply
Yes.
sit and bang away at hours with the idea that if I just grind hard enough and long enough, that it'll all work out. You got to have the vision of where do you want to go. And the truth is, when you know that, I think we agree, you'll figure out how to get there, whether you'll figure it out yourself, you'll find the right people. I mean, I got to be honest, I don't do anything original. New England Iris Rep Conference, no offense, NYU, UCLA, I got friends, you know, Chuck Reddick, they've already done this.
Yes.
You know, the podcast, I'm not the first one to come up with a podcast. I mean, so, you know, it's not like you have to sit around and think of something no one else has ever thought of. Look at the people you look up to in your practice, in your whatever. Look at what they do and follow the game plan. You know, there's no rocket science to this. And so, you know, so we've covered the why, the what, and the how. Now, how do we marry all this, right? I mean, how do we pull it all together? Because you deal with people all the time who are trying to pull it all together.
Yep.
I'm somebody who's trying to pull it together. So how do you kind of marry all these, for lack of a better term, you know, to get them working?
Yeah. I'm just going to literally tell you what I tell everyone. And I have a webinar on it that I can share with you guys. It's something, it turned into a webinar, but it was actually my QuickBooks Connect 2017 session on basically what we're talking about. So if you guys want to check that out, I'll go ahead and provide Eric with the link. But this is what I said in that session. I say, focus on what you do best. Leverage technology to create and automate systems and scale your resources, and then create that team that's going to support you. And that team that's going to help you grow and thrive is either your own team, like in Eric's case, or in my case, it's been my strategic partners. Like, everybody knows that when I share, I always share my partners. If you go to my website, I actually have a page that says Trusted Partners. And you get on there. You get on there and I share about what you do. I talk about your awesomeness because you elevate me. Like, you elevate that smaller practitioner that doesn't want to have a 20, 30 person firm, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a massive message to share. And so in the case of a smaller practitioner, if you're listening, I know many of you are out there, you can grow in two ways. You can go ahead and grow your team, but be ready for that. And, you know, Eric can talk a little bit about that, because that's a whole different animal, growing your team. But I just want you all to know that you can also grow with partners. You can create these amazing strategic alliances. Let's say, for instance, in my case, since I'm doing less taxes, but I have a lot of clients and leads and community people that still search me out for taxes. So I have two CPAs and an enrolled agent, and I send all the work to them because I don't want to do taxes anymore, but I also don't want to lose that opportunity to be that connector and the hub to find a qualified professional. So people will come to Mariette because they have a relationship with Mariette. And then what do? I send them to one of my strategic partners. Of course, we have our own relationship going, and we all win. The client wins, I win, my strategic partner wins. And you can do that with any type of service you want. You could do that with financial planners. I know many times people have been like, Mariette, why don't you become a financial planner? And I tell them, because I have 3 amazing financial planners, and I prefer to send the work to them, and we create a relationship. Insurance providers, health insurance, small business lenders. One of my biggest partners is Camino Financial. They're a small business lender that specifically focuses on the underserved Latino market. And I love that because one of my whys is to not leave small businesses behind, especially the Latino community. And so what did I do? I partnered up with a partner focused on the Latino community. So you need to find those partners. You need to find those partners that are on the same page with you and that are going to allow you to scale, even though you may be just your little you. Me, I'm a small mommypreneur with 3 kids, but I actually can talk to thousands and tens of thousands of people because of the partnerships I've created.
Yeah, no, it's it reminds me, there was an article in Wired a few years ago called Business 2.0, and it was about a toy company in Manhattan, 500 million in sales, the 2 founders and 1 admin. Everything was partnered. The design was outsourced to India, manufacturing was in China, marketing was from a Canadian company, and they literally just managed the flow. That was their whole job, was to manage the flow. So can you give us some example of whys, if there are people, because, and like I said, I struggled with, and I say why, but almost like what you want. Can you give some examples in the accounting world of what you've heard? Like what are the whys that you hear from your folks?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I did go ahead, and knowing that Eric and I were going to have a podcast, I went ahead and started asking people, what are their whys? And it was a struggle. It was a struggle, which was just proof to me that, many people don't ask themselves those questions. But, they're usually always around, helping others, helping build the business, helping other companies thrive, being I love one of them, and it's actually not even an accountant, but the small business lender, being a responsible lender. A lot of people, especially in the alternative lending, they're a little bit worried about how the lenders work. And so their why is to provide responsible lending. My why is to leave no business behind. And so I've seen other people's whys saying, to be a purpose-driven firm. And so you really just have to deep dive into it. You have other ones that talk about numbers. I work on your numbers so you don't have to. So sometimes the whys sound like slogans, and that's okay. Just so you know, whys are an actual evolution. Like many times, you say, my why is to help people. And, because I've been with a coach, my coach would be like, that's help who? Who is it you're helping? Why do you want to help them? Why do you think they need help? So they're always going and having you go deeper into your why. And so, for instance, I'll give you an example. So when I said, well, my business is that, when I first started with my why, it was because my mother had a chain of restaurants for 30 years, and she wasn't able to find that support system and that financial team, so she had to close her doors. And so I always say, I don't want that to ever happen to any other business. That's what I always used to say. And so when I was talking to my coach, they're like, so you don't want what to happen? And I'd say, well, I don't want any other business to be left behind because they don't have the partners to serve them. Well, what do you mean by that? And then I'd say, well, I don't want any businesses to be left behind because they need to be financially literate, and they need to have the accountability and the partners that are willing to help them grow and thrive. So do you see how that was like an evolution? And I started with just, I don't want that to ever happen again. And so it's something that you literally kind of talk through over and over again until it's as if you're introducing yourself. My name is Mariette Martinez, and I don't want any other business to be left behind due to the lack of financial literacy and the partners that want to help them grow and thrive. So you like say it like it's your name, but it doesn't happen overnight. Like that takes time to be able to say that.
Yep, no, and your why sometimes will change over time.
Yes.
Which is fine. I mean, and that does happen. So for the listener out there who's been listening to this, you and I go back and forth and says, okay, you know what? I want to build my dream accounting practice. Whether that's bookkeeping or IRS representation or forensic accounting or financial planning or whatever. They want to provide higher value services. And by the way, if you're listening to this, do not forget international tax and state and local tax.
Yes.
Because the internet, what it has done is it used to be, and I've said this before, when I was at KPMG, big companies came to us to do state and local planning, because it was big dollars. Now, every mom and pop selling on the internet has to be after Wayfair, now has to be looking at, do I have sales tax exposure in 50 states? I'm selling on the internet internationally. Do I have an issue? Do I have a foreign account because I've got money on deposit somewhere? I mean, all of a sudden now, I don't want to say routine, but the practitioners who are not in those big regional international firms are now finding that they're dealing with issues that you didn't deal with before. If you had a small local practice, you kind of knew who you were dealing with. Now, Mariette, do you have clients who are in other states?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you just mentioned something that was so important. I know we're going to get to that in regards to like the high valued services.
Yep.
But the fact that you can build your practice, or you can build out your practice, because we're talking about building up and elevating, based on a specialty on sales taxes or on state taxes or on state and local taxes, or on state and local taxes for a specific industry, or on tax preparation for e-commerce, or tax preparation for a specific industry or specific niche. Guess what? I focus on tax preparation for an entire community. Spanish-speaking small business owners, Latino small business owners, there's over 5 million of them. Why? Because they don't have that community that helps them grow, learn, and thrive. I know that personally because I lived it with my mom's business. And so you can actually step it up and elevate based on a niche, based on a service, based on a specialty, and it's interesting because people never really thought that really you can build your practice just doing e-commerce taxes. If you're really good at that, if you're going to learn the e-commerce for all the different states, heck yeah. I mean, nobody else wants to do that. I'll give you that much. I don't want to do that. So absolutely.
Right. And so for the person who's listening to this, who said, you know what, you're right, I want to elevate. Is there a plan to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing is I will tell you, and I think that Eric and I have mentioned a few people already and a few opportunities to learn. There is a plan to do it. I'll mention a few, different opportunities that you can even do specifically if you're a tax preparer in the tax industry. But I'm just going to mention this one because Scaling New Heights, Eric and I are both teaching there. It's actually about the transformative advisor and the different opportunities to elevate and scale your business on different types of services you can provide. So I'm just going to mention that because I think it's a great opportunity if you haven't gone to a conference before. That one's specifically about elevating and transforming yourself as a stronger business owner in this industry. But, a few things that come to mind. I talk a lot about being a small business tax advisor. And I've done a lot of webinars and live trainings about that. And what I talk about there is that because of the automation and because of this whole idea that many small businesses have embraced technology, you are able to provide this holistic full service experience to your clients. You are able to do their accounting and bookkeeping and their sales taxes and their compliance work, and then as well do their tax work. For many times, people would either be a bookkeeper or an accountant or be a tax preparer, and there is this big disconnect of these two communities. And what I've been sharing is that you can do both. I'm actually doing a training for Latino tax professionals organization, which is another organization that talks a lot about this, where a lot of their tax preparers have not implemented bookkeeping, and they've been just focusing on the tax work. Well, they have this huge sweep of their entrepreneurs, of their Schedule C clients, now formalizing and becoming corporations and partnerships. And so they really need to understand the bookkeeping practices and the accounting practices if they're preparing business returns. And so now I'm out there teaching these tax preparers how to implement bookkeeping, teaching them financial literacy, teaching them financial accounting, because of course they have to have a very strong grasp on the financial statements to be able to prepare the business tax returns. And so you can connect these two. You can marry now the bookkeeping and the tax. Or before, I felt like there was such a disconnect. It was almost like, oh no, I do one over the other. And you can do both.
Yeah, no. And here's the other thing. If you're, again, my thing has been iris representation. But let's say you want to do forensics. You think accounting is cool, bookkeeping is cool. I don't know how, and I get this sometimes, I don't know how to get started. Really?
Yeah.
There's more information now than ever before at your fingertips. So the first thing, of course, is what are you interested in doing? And you do have to put out some effort to go do this. Go to Scaling New Heights. Go to a lecture, listen to a webcast, read something. The idea that you're going to sit home and somehow you'll just kind of float to the top. I have to tell you, the concept of success and overnight success is so BS that, and again, go back to Carnegie and Vanderbilt and all the rest, who had coaching, mastermind groups and everything else for the very reason. And they built those massive, first of all, it was a much different time where you could do some of the stuff that they did where you couldn't do today. But nothing happens overnight. Progress is always deliberate. It is always deliberate and intentional. And you need to be intentional about whatever it is you want to do. And again, go back to the servo mechanism, figure out what you want. And once you've identified what you want, go after getting that. And if you stumble or get stuck, look for help. But there are people who can help you get past and keep going until you get to where you want to go. All right.
I want to just mention something really quickly, Eric, because that was so powerful. And again, I think, I only pick up on these things because I know that you've been doing it. You've been studying, we probably listened to the same kind of people, read the same books. But when you said success is not deliberate, that's incredibly true and incredibly important for people to know. Like, success is deliberate. Like, you actually have to say, I'm going to be successful. You have to have intentions to be successful. You have to tell yourself that. You have to work towards that. You don't just wake up one night. There's a really funny John Maxwell TED Talk out there where, he's, John Maxwell, the inspirational speaker.
Absolutely.
And he has this funny one where he's on the top of the mountain and he says, he's looking down and he says, who goes on the top of the mountain and looks down and says, so how did I get here? You know what I mean? Like, how you got there, you didn't just magically wake up on the top of the mountain. Like, it was deliberate, right?
No. And Ed Mylett talks about how we all have like an internal temperature. And as you work harder and things heat up and you start seeing success, your body or your way of being, your mind, almost in many ways doesn't like being there. It's not comfortable. And it will try to pull you back to whatever your set point is. And so it takes effort to keep going, right?
Yes.
To keep pushing. All right. But, given the time, let's pivot back to you. So tell us about Tus Tres Maestras. Right, masters.
Yeah, so Tus Tres Maestras. So it's your three teachers, and it really comes back to my why. So, again, with the transformation of my why and what I do and why I do it, then I had to go to, well, how am I going to get this message out there that no business left behind, really creating financial literacy. And it's not only financial literacy for small business owners, it's actually small business financial literacy for our own colleagues. I realized that many people in our industry kind of skipped a few steps and they didn't get that, that formal education and that financial literacy. And I wanted to figure out how to do that. And I also wanted to be able to impact the Latino community. And of course, we know Latino community is both English speaking and Spanish speaking. And so as I have been creating, a lot of massive awareness around financial literacy and being an educator for accounting, bookkeeping, and tax professionals, and solopreneurs, smaller businesses, I needed to figure out how I can do this in bilingual format. And I personally, Spanish is my second language. And so I was born here. My mom immigrated with her siblings, but all 6 of her children. So I have 5 other siblings. We were all born here. And so we're second generation. And so we didn't speak Spanish. We learned it as we went. But again, my why was no business left behind. And I wanted to focus on the Latino community. So I found 2 partners, which are my co-founders, Vanessa Ocampo and Carmen Manrique. And they both have businesses that only trained and implemented accounting and bookkeeping and QuickBooks in Spanish. So their entire business was in Spanish. And I said, we need to connect. And so in 2017, right next to you, we actually had the very first Spanish track at Scaling New Heights. It was a huge success. We even had a salsa party to celebrate at the event. It was pretty amazing. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Yep. And then after Scaling New Heights, we went ahead and also spoke at the Latino Tax Fest, which is the only organization that focuses on the Latino tax professional community. So I told them we need to connect with these partners because they literally have our audience. Like, you can't get any hotter than that. That's a community we want. And we partnered up with them, and we decided to create a bilingual e-learning platform to teach small business owners and also bookkeeping and tax professionals around financial literacy and around accounting technologies like QuickBooks and workflows and other things they need to do to grow their practices. And we're doing that in English and in Spanish. And I couldn't have done that in Spanish. I mean, I could have by hiring out translators and trying to figure it out, but I figured it would be better to do it with partners. And that's why I partnered with Success My SS.
Yeah, no, and we're both going to be teaching also at Latino Tax Fest.
Yes.
This year.
Yes.
And they had me at the fajitas and margaritas night. So
and mariachis too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mariette, before I ask my last question, how can our listeners get a hold of you?
Yes, so you can get a hold of me first and foremost on my website, mariettemartinez.com. You can, of course, connect with me right there. There's a form for you to connect with me. I am all over on social, and I love connecting through social. So would love for you to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter are my favorite places. I also have a YouTube channel that I provide tons of videos for all of you around, again, financial literacy, QuickBooks, and technologies. So you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, and at the conferences, feel free if you go there. Hopefully many of you will go to the few of the events we mentioned. Come up to I know Eric's the same way. Just come up to us. We'll probably be running from room to room, but still find us and hang out with us. I mean, there's, Brad Smith said it best at QuickBooks Connect 2018. He said, you can win minds one to many, but you only win hearts one to one. And I am such a believer in that. So if you want to win my heart, come and connect with me, meet me, give me a hug. And I promise to do the same to you.
All right. No, and I got those links. I will put them in the description below so people can go and find you on, you're all over the place so that it won't be hard. So anyway, last thing, we're both going to be, as I mentioned, we're both teaching at Latino Tax Fest. So what are you going to be teaching us?
Yeah, so I'll actually be teaching the tax professional community on how to implement bookkeeping into their practices so that way they can elevate their business with bookkeeping. All
right, I'm actually doing payroll tax problems, which is probably the number one reason why small businesses get into trouble. Yes. So, and they'll probably have us, again, competing with each other side by side. For some reason, that seems to be kind of a thing. But anyway, so Mariette, listen, thank you for doing this. This has been great. We'll definitely do this again. In fact, let's try to do this before Latino Tax Fest.
Oh, that'd be great.
Well, we'll get through Scaling New Heights. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we hear, because Joe has put together, it looks like a tremendous program. So I'm actually very interested to hear the speakers and the other speakers and see what's going on. But so let's maybe reconnect after that. And otherwise, listen, thank you for doing this. Again, everyone, thank you for listening. If you want to connect with Mariette, I will put the links below in the description. Go connect with her. I don't know about the run up and hug her, but I'll leave that between you and her, she and you. But no, really, do connect. And, we do appreciate feedback, ideas. And of course, if we can be helpful, we absolutely, both of us would love to do that. So Mariette, again, thank you very much for doing this and agreeing to make time in the middle of the season, which I know is crazy. And we will definitely be doing this again. But if nothing else, I'll see you in Salt Lake City.
I'll see you in Salt Lake City.
But I'll see you online long before then. So
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.